You know what I think? Nintendo exclusively makes games for pussies. If you like Nintendo, you're probably a guy who likes Mario, Kirby, or Pokemon. Or in other words, a little bitch. They have no cool games for guys like me. Why aren't we funding this?
If you ask someone to think about a racing game, they'd probably say Mario Kart, but if you ask them to name another, they'd probably say Gran Turismo. Then if you ask them to do it 50 more times, and if they hadn't punched you in the mouth at this point, they'd bring up F-Zero, the coolest Nintendo franchise. If you ask me, I think it really sucks how F-Zero isn't given the respect it deserves. The whole series is a futuristic, super high-speed racing game with metal music in the background. Literally, what else could you ask for?
Maybe, games in the damn series?
Yeah, it's apparent that people have started to give zero Fs about this franchise, and that saddens me so much, as there's just so much potential in these games. My first experience with the series was with F-Zero X, the one that released on the N64. I got it as one of the 5 hand-me-down games from my parents, and as a kid, I remember liking it. It was pretty, okay at it too. Anything crazy? Yeah, I wasn't really that good at this game. I'd always just rather go to my grandma's and play Mario Kart 64 when I needed my racing fix. But as time went by, and I actually figured out who this was and got so much more into the history of video games as a medium and such, I discovered the original F-Zero on Masterpieces in Smash. I played it, thought to myself what a cool novelty it was, and proceeded to forget about it a couple seconds later. Out of all the options of games I had, I'd usually only boot this up just to check out what started it all, and then turn it off after losing my first race. But I think it's about time I strapped in and really gave this game a real go. So let's check out F-Zero 1 on the SNES. F-Zero is one of the many productions of Nintendo legend Shigeru Miyamoto, but was directed by Kazunoubu Shimizu. It was actually the first ever project of the art director, Takaya Imamura. He created the game's characters and settings. Due to Imamura's work on this game, it led to him working on other Nintendo products, like some supporting Star Fox rules and some Zelda ones as well.
I'm not kidding when I say these two characters were made by the exact same person.
Speaking of Captain Falcon, he was actually initially supposed to be the mascot for the SNES itself in Japan. Someone cool with that graphic novel comic book aesthetic. His color scheme even mimics that of the Super Famicom's buttons. When it was about time to ship F-Zero, however, they realized they didn't have any racers yet, so Imamura designed the other game's characters based around Captain Falcon's initial design. F-Zero is one of the 3 launch titles for the SNES over here in the Americas and in PAL territories, and was one of 2 in Japan, the other one being Super Mario World. That should show you how much stock Nintendo was putting into this game. I mean, why shouldn't they have? They had the power of Mode 7 on their side. Mode 7 is a form of texture mapping available on the SNES, which allows a raster graphic plane to be rotated and scaled freely, simulating the appearance of 3D environments. The Mode 7 it kind of makes it look 3D. Hell, you can argue that's probably why the game exists in the first place, just to show off this fancy tech, as the other guys didn't have shit on this. But enough of graphics talk, I just want to know what the hell's going on here. Well, we can pop open the manual and have a little look here. You've got your standard casual manual affair, but they even included a little comic book short story in there too. How cool is that? Not to mention that Captain Falcon was also inspired by other graphic novel heroes like Batman. You can really see that bleeding through here, the way Captain Falcon beats the hell out of people. The story here is that Captain Falcon is a regular old bounty hunter. He enters the F-Zero race in search of money, I guess? All I do know is that Pico is racist, and this is life or death for Samurai Goro. I wish they put as much effort as they did in the manual into the box art. The North American one looks like lame, free clip art your middle school art teacher would use, but the Japanese one mimics the comic book aesthetic very well, and definitely stood out from other first-party Nintendo games that were released around that time. Let's just finally hop in the game, huh? Well, the first real thing you see in the game is the 4 playable characters, which is a far cry from the now 40 playable racers in later installments. I know what you're thinking, right? Only 4 racers? The races must feel really empty, and you're only going to be able to come in places 1 through 4. See, Nintendo thinks of everything. In order to prevent those things, they include a bunch of crash dummies who exist just to slow you down. They don't even do anything outside of that, and passing them doesn't even boost your rank. I'm pretty sure they're just here so you don't lose your mind. But here you've got Captain Falcon and his Blue Falcon, Dr. Stewart and his Golden Fox, Pico and his Wild Goose, and Samurai Goro with his Fire Stingray. Is that an STD? All of the racers have different speed and acceleration stats, shown off by a graph and an ear-piercing ring simulating that same stat. If you ask me though, I just cannot tell the difference. At the end of the day, I just usually pick the Golden Fox because he was my favorite growing up in F-Zero X. Anyway, ready to race. Oh, B is to accelerate. Allow me to break down what playing the original F-Zero is like. It's a racing game, right? Try to pass multiple racers in each course and try to be first. But in order to progress through each lap, you've got to place high enough, with the bar getting higher and higher with each lap you pass in order to not get Dairy Queened. On top of that, up in the corner you have a power meter. Nintendo should have sued. Your power meter will decrease when you hit walls, other racers, or obstacles, so it's imperative you tread lightly while also going as fast as possible. You're gonna get hit by landmines, electric terrains, these magnets that pull you off the center of the track. Ooh, I really hate those. And the other racers themselves, I'm also counting as obstacles, because look at these dickheads. When your power meter runs out, yeah, they really wanted to sell the physical toll it takes on kart racers to run into walls over and over again. So why does Mario get away with this? You can replenish your power meters in the pit area usually after completing a lap or other times just right before it. Every time you clear a lap, you get access to a super jet, these little S's down here that'll give you a massive speed boost when used. But it's definitely best to use them on a straight shot because it's super easy to start pinballing off shit due to how unruly your speed becomes. If you get enough points, once a race is finished, you can acquire a spare machine, which is pretty much just an extra life, letting you give it another go in case you crash and burn. Crash and combust, I guess, is more accurate. Tracks also have more than just hazards. They've got methods of speeding you up, like dash panels and giant ramps. Just be careful with the latter. Speaking of tracks, there's 15 different ones that are spread over the game's cups: Knight, Queen, and King. Each cup has 4 difficulties: beginner, standard, and expert, with master being unlocked after clearing each cup on expert difficulty. When I said there's 15 different tracks just a minute ago, I wasn't being totally honest with you. There's 9 courses, but most of them get sequels, or even threequels. What blows hard about them, though, is how I can't think of anything interesting to say about them at all. I played through every single one to get footage for this video, and I can't think of what makes Mute City different from Port Town, or Red Canyon different from Deathwind. Well, I guess I know those names are terrible. Just the epitome of not worth writing home about. And even if I did,
Hey honey, they put Whiteland 2 in F-Zero.
the only one that stuck with me was Firefield, and trust me, that is not a good thing. At least they all have good music. They were really trying with what they had here, and I think F-Zero is up there with Mega Man X and Earthbound for having some of my favorite soundtracks on the console. I will now proceed to toss more praise the game's way. I mean, it looks kinda nice. Just making the most out of that Mode 7 chip. Most old 3D stuff makes you want to puke, but this holds up relatively well. Kinda only for novelty purposes, but holding up is still holding up. It also doesn't really feel stale and repetitive. It's weird how the tracks all blend together in my memories, but when I'm playing them in a sitting, they feel fresh. I like the aesthetic of the game too. Futuristic high-speed action is a favorite of mine, and F-Zero captures that pretty well in my opinion. Speaking of, well, nothing really, let's talk about how the game controls.
Also, the game controls like ass.
Okay, let me be fair here. The steering and drifting in F-Zero is supposed to be unruly. The whole point is that it's crazy fast and hard to control. It's supposed to make you feel like this. And I'm totally cool with that. I dare say the early stages are somewhat fun, because they make you feel good at the game.
So why are you bitching?
I'm getting to it. These later courses, my God, they require so much precision and attention. This is not a game you can shut your brain off and be good at. You gotta be locked in at all times. It feels like one wrong move is gonna send you bouncing off everything like a damn ping pong ball, which I want to praise because on paper it sounds fun, but in practice I want to blow my head off when playing Firefield. Like I said, it's supposed to be hard, see, but it's just too damn much for me. Now you're probably gonna take that as I'm a little bitch, and you're allowed to, but at the same time, I'm the guy who sometimes talks about video games on YouTube. So what's it make you? It makes you correct. When I see this game on my shelf, what comes to mind is the tight corners, just barely making that first place mark, slipping past everyone at high speeds with such skill and precision, and blocks out all the bullshit that I endure later. The difficulty curve is just so huge. It's like life. It should get harder as you go along, but this is like demanding perfection from toddlers. It's just too damn early.
Has anyone else in the world said that today?
The later installments get this right in my opinion. They're even easier to pick up than this one, but mastering them feels way more satisfying, and even enjoyable. Despite all that shade I just threw, there's a very small, very little part of me that kinda thinks that one day I might probably get better at it maybe.
Self-doubt's a bitch.
Can't lie. At the end of the day, the steering is so twitchy and unwieldy, and the level design is so BS that I think to myself, I might be able to handle this if I really try. That's really all I have to say on this game. It can be fun, really, but playing through the later levels is just such a chore. The overall game itself isn't really anything special. As someone who started with the sequel, going back and spending 2.5 hours of my life completing it feels a little rewarding, not gonna lie. The boring early stages and ridiculous later ones, controls I'm torn over, they don't distract me from what this game spawned in the future. Don't take my complaining as I don't like this game. I think it's alright, just something that I'm not itching to pop back in and play anytime soon. I'm glad I finally sat down and beat it, however. At the very least, it's only up from here.
Well, there you have it. Just a brief review of the start to one of my favorite Nintendo franchises. I'd be lying if I said this game wasn't impactful on me, though. It inspires you to roll with the punches and get going when the rough gets going. So I've decided to live the rest of my life like I'm constantly playing through Firefield.